You're live.
This is the Senate Transportation Committee. It's Wednesday, the 29th of April. We are here with an update on the state rail plan. And I don't know everybody in the room, but Dave had a long history now some years ago with my local planning commission. It was there for quite a long time.
Yes, thank you. I'm Dave Pelletier with the Agency of Transportation, the planning section. And
I'm Zoe Niederland. I work with Dave also in the planning section of V-Trans.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So if you can give us the update, we've got about an hour.
absolutely, go right ahead.
Good morning, Chair Westman and other members of Senate Transportation Committee. We're happy to share information about the state rail plan with a few bits of information about the related state freight plan. We have a presentation that is approximately 20 minutes. It has slides on which we could go deeper. We're happy to take questions at any time or discuss it at the end as you prefer. What we hope to cover today is a few words about the coordinated planning between this rail plan and freight plan, summary of the rail plan, and a sneak peek at the freight plan, and then to wrap it together on a slide and happy to discuss any of it. Honored that we have Dan Delabria here as well. So we are in the planning area. He is in charge of the rail program. And so,
What's that? The doing area.
The doing,
yes,
yeah.
would you like to?
You plan it, I do it.
Do you want to introduce yourself? I probably got your title wrong.
Chair, is that fine?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Dan Delabria, I'm the rail director for V-Trans.
And then can Carl introduce himself also?
Oh, I'm Carl Fowler. I'm an advocate for rail and a member of, for the last 25 years, the State Rail Advisory Council. And going way back in the previous power history, I made the original structure of the schedule proposal for President Vermont to replace the overnight $5 way back in 1995. So I posed in this for a very long time. I ran a business for over 30 years that organized tours by rail all over the world. And one of our primary destinations was Vermont. And we were always interested in trying to see how it could be made better and worked on more.
And you're a huge resource to me and to others.
Are you in the Wyndham district?
No, not at all.
No, I live in Williston.
Oh.
But I did live in Brattleboro for many years. I'm very much looking forward to the invitation. The first thing I did as a volunteer committee member, beyond my involvement in the rail in general, was to sit on a town committee that tried to look at getting a new station in Brattleboro, starting about 1998. And we spun our wheels, just like the Montreal project. There were so many weird oddities. Who owned the power line? What side of the track the power line was on? Was the platform owned by the railroad or by etc.? It is going to be a supreme joy to see a great new station open in Brattleboro after all these years. And it does show how these projects can, that might move glacially, but on the other hand, they eventually get done.
Thank you.
I'd like to start with a slide just reorienting all of us to passenger rail and to freight rail. So on the passenger rail slide, if you would. Oh, I'm sorry, to start with a slide about the coordinated planning efforts. The state is required to prepare a rail plan and a freight plan, and we do that through one contract with consultant support, because we prepare the rail plan relating to Amtrak passenger rail service and freight moved by rail, and then bring the freight moved by rail side forward into the freight plan, which is all modes of freight movement. We conduct this work in an engaging manner as best as we can. So we work with the VRAC and a variety of the Vermont Rail Advisory Council and a variety of other advisory groups and outreach groups with our regional planning commissions, with the public. On the V-Trans website, there are interactive web maps, a story map, a 5-minute intro to why rail matters, because not everyone realizes why it is so important and interesting. And the public meetings are recorded and available on the website. Below you see the links to those two web pages. And just at a very high level, in Vermont, we have approximately 580 miles of active rail, approximately 300 of which are owned by the state. There's on the order of 41 million tons of freight moving into, out of, through, and within Vermont. with more to come about that, and over 116,000 passengers riding the two Amtrak lines that serve Vermont, the Vermonter between St. Albans and Washington, and the Ethan Allen Express between New York and formerly Rutland, as you know, extended to Burlington in 2022. If I'm saying that right. Going on to the next slide, there are always natural concerns about, well, will an expensive addition like that be used? Will it pull ridership from other lines? And the answer is ridership increased. Passenger ridership on Amtrak services serving Vermont had been increasing before COVID. It dropped during COVID, and the ridership is now up above what it had been before COVID. And not only did the Vermonter extend the Ethan Allen Express extension not pull ridership away from the Vermonter, but the total ridership in Vermont has continued to increase. I want to note at the business side of things, we track both federal and state measures. And while no mode of transportation pays for itself, transportation is a good provided by the government for the people. Roads are not free, trains are not free, buses are not free. But the fare box return on Amtrak is going in the right direction. It is quite high, and the effective speed, travel, and the on-time performance are also going in the correct direction.
So
Yes.
the 87%, what does that mean exactly? The 87 and the 78%?
I will defer, if I may, Chair Westman, to my colleagues.
I just have one comment to what you said before. Roads are not free and the rail is not free. We have a lot of people that think they are, so. I just-
Yeah, we talk about that a lot.
We talk about that a lot. I don't know how to get through to people and say it isn't free,
This is part of why I keep
but
saying,
thank you for the, okay, go ahead.
may I defer?
Sure. So,
Dan?
so fare box recovery essentially looks at cost versus, ticket value. And there's a lot of times where there's discounted rates. There's all these factors that go into fare box recovery. The train is not free. It does not pay for itself, but we do have a high rate of recovery for the cost that we do charge in our ticket value. But and this accounts for a lot of different subsidies in there. So there's not just the ticket versus so we pay our service and New York pays for a portion of it. There's certain it's a very complicated recovery. The percentage here is a very complicated formula, but we do have a high rate. Our ticket value, and we watch the ticket value. We actually have Amtrak has a calculation where we look at, can we get $1 more? What's that going to do to ridership? And there's a fine line between adding $1 to a ticket and losing 10 passengers, or vice versa, right? Will that extra $10 gain or lose ridership? And we watch that when we monitor that. So fare box recovery is an important piece on what we evaluate a lot.
Great. So could you just send us more detail on that?
Sure, I'll have Amtrak do that because it's their calculation.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay.
I think at the highest level, passenger rail is doing well on the performance measures that are tracked. What you're asking is great questions, but for a broader public discussion.
Oh, definitely. And
Yeah.
that's much more than I would have expected. And I'm interested in rail for indirect benefits.
To say a few words about freight rail, because freight rail has tremendous indirect benefits.
Mhm.
I can get it out the fact, and I hope that I'm saying this correctly, but for total freight rail movement in the state by all modes, I believe the direct value is on the order of $50 billion, and that is expected to double by 2050 based on the national forecasting. So movement of freight, even at the direct level, is a great contributor to the Vermont economy. And then the indirect of the jobs that it generates in passenger rail too, the way that the items brought to Vermont are then added, value is added to them, and they are often bought here or shipped back out because much freight is shipped out of Vermont. So in freight, there is also a tremendous amount of indirect value added to Vermont. Excuse me. The freight system in Vermont carried approximately 2 million tons of freight in 2023. And while that sounds like much less than the big picture of freight, it's a very important role that freight rail serves in terms of conveying heavy, bulky goods that are not very time sensitive in a cost effective, safe manner that protects the environment and is very efficient in terms of fuel. Moving freight by rail is on the order of 4 times more efficient than moving by truck. And a nugget I find interesting is that you can move a ton of freight approximately 470 miles on a gallon of diesel. So freight rail has a very real role to play as we continue to move forward, serving our businesses and the environment. Additionally, what you see in the figure to the right is that where a truck carries on the order of 20 tons, a standard rail car carries on the order of 110 tons, and that moving freight by rail is very safe. Moving the same weight and distance, for example, 1 billion ton miles, might involve approximately 230 truck crashes and 1 train crash. And we want to eliminate all crashes, but it is to be noted that moving freight by rail is very safe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, yes, I wish we got this slide at the beginning of our MBUF conversation, because I think a key piece that we're missing is that these large vehicles are the main contributor to our road wear and tear, and there's a really obvious alternative option. And I think disincentivizing the use of 18-wheelers, large trucks to transit our goods is a benefit to us as a state because it makes freight more competitive. And oftentimes it's cheaper for folks to ship via freight than it is to do via a trucking company. But the logistics of the trucking company are often so much more individualized. You can get A to B to C, D, E, versus you're just A to B essentially with a train. And then you need to find how to get again from that location to another. So the logistical work that a business has to do makes it harder for freight. Typically, you have to have like a scale, seems to be what I've seen. So I do hope that in your plan, you can articulate the financial benefit of disincentivizing truck travel like that. I think you also have to make that case because that's the only way that freight will be continued in our state. I don't know how to put that, but
I think you will like our presentation, and a way I might phrase that is, how do we help each mode do what it does best?
exactly.
Rail is very good for moving heavy, bulky, less time sensitive goods. And then trucking is very good for the last mile or last 20 mile personalized, individualized effort. And this transload movement between the two is what we will focus on. And the overall movement and connection of modes. Movement between and connection of modes is very much what we're covering in this presentation.
Amazing. Okay. Well, and I already asked Dan beforehand about container freight, and come on, Vermont, like let's do it. But that sounds like it might be a very long conversation, so I won't ask that question online.
No, but it's good that you support it. It's super.
Yeah.
No, it can happen.
The other matter close and dear to people's hearts is flooding.
I just wondered,
I'm sorry.
do you only have data till 2023 on the amount of freight? You don't have,
As a planner, freight data
hard to get?
is hard to get and is not released as frequently as some other kinds of data.
Okay.
I can speak with you another time about data matters
Okay.
and some work that VTrans is doing on that subject.
Okay.
We can also, at the links, there are technical appendices to this, to the plan itself and to the presentation, where you could get into some of the nuances and the explanation of the methodology and what data is available. So we could direct you to that as well.
And that is online, but that's one of my pet peeves.
All right. Happy to help in the future if we can.
Thanks.
flood vulnerability and resilience. Again, a matter near and dear to many Vermonters' hearts. As you probably have heard before, VTrans has a highly regarded transportation resilience planning tool oriented to highways and bridges. As part of the work on the rail plan, we expanded it in a mode appropriate manner to rail. And this is very important because if you take out part of a rail line, it's even more negatively impactful than taking out a road because there are so few alternatives and it's so complicated to reroute a freight train or an Amtrak train. We were honored to work closely with rail staff. We're happy that rail staff will integrate the results of the analysis in projects where they can, but also that this provides support for applications for grants to address the resilience of the rail system. I think that's the main points I wanted to cover with that.
Where is that bridge? Or that looks like it's a culvert over?
If I see the picture is a
We-
question.
Yeah,
I believe that's on the VTR, the VNR, that's down south of Rutland.
Okay.
Can't remember the bridge number.
with regard to with regard to the rail plan, it's recommended at a policy level to address the resilience of the rail system and then at specific highly vulnerable, very important locations.
Apparently what happened.
I thought that you all might like a summary slide about the public comments and discussions. There was extensive and very positive public engagement on the update of the rail plan. And primarily what I want to note with this is that one might say, does the public understand the nuances and the complexities and the interdependencies that relate to rail? And I just want to report that we got a wide variety of comments and there were a lot of interesting, thoughtful comments. Many of these themes are then, incorporated in the goals and the recommended initiatives. The goals of the 2025 rail plan build on the goals of the previous one, the 2021 rail plan, the main difference being the incorporation of resilience. So the goals of the rail plan are to maintain the existing system, which is to say, to attain and maintain a state of good repair, to expand capacity to accommodate growth, increase rail system use, both at the freight and passenger level, fund the rail system adequately and sustainably. I know this is a matter you all discuss. Improving intermodal connectivity, both at the freight and passenger level, act on opportunities for ancillary and economic development, and enhance safety, security, and resilience of the rail system while reducing negative impacts to the environment. I'm going to move along and just say to you, we went through a robust process, both on the public engagement side and on the data analysis side. On the data analysis side, we worked both through the analysis and the comments and other related plans and previous plans to develop a range of potential initiatives and then use a screening process and public engagement to narrow it down to 38 recommended initiatives. And we use that wording because it's a whole range of things. You can't just say, let's build capital projects and take care of everything. It wouldn't be effective and there's not money for it. The approaches include policy recommendations, opportunities we see to collaborate, capital projects where they are appropriate, and opportunities to work in partnership. The slides that follow show all 38 of the recommended initiatives, but I'm not going to read them. You will see highlighted on the slides a few of the recommended initiatives that drew particular enthusiasm and discussion, and I will just highlight one or two per slide.
Where's that?
Jeez, is that Quinn?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh, I know, that is the
I don't know
slide.
where that is.
Middle Bridge?
It's where there was a rock fall that
Oh, that's near,
where what's your name took a series of pictures and
I think
shared them
that's
with me.
between Clarendon and Ludlow.
It's where I think it's near Ludlow where there had been a serious
Could
rock
be.
fall, and you see sort of by accident, the tip of a
That's-
vehicle that was on the tracks helping check that everything was all clear and ready.
Thank you.
These are VTrans photos. So don't worry that there's a lot on these slides, please. Next slide, please. The recommended initiatives are presented by the goal that they most advance. I do want to note that any initiative may advance more than one goals. They're on the slide of a goal they most serve. And I want to note that to achieve any of the recommended initiatives, often there are interdependencies and need for additional initiatives to also advance. We spoke a little bit about increasing the resilience of the rail network. And I want to touch on that the rail lines do collaborate and reach out. For example, VRS offers free training and exercising with the municipalities along the Western Corridor rail line to be prepared for if something happens. We hope nothing will happen. We'll do everything in advance. Everyone should be doing everything in advance to avoid anything happening. But we also want to be prepared if something does happen and be prepared to collaborate. I do also want to put in the good word for Operation Lifesaver, which works to increase the safety of the passenger rail system. And there's always need for volunteers to do presentations and collaborate. With regard to this, achieving and maintaining a state of good repair, combined with the funding goal, we are not yet at the point of having the full rail system upgraded to capacity to carry the 286,000 pound standard cars, in particular at all the bridges, and the having the track also ready to carry the weight of the cars. That ability, that state of good repair also relates to the ability of the system to carry passenger rail and to carry it at speeds that people would like to see. For example, to achieve 79 miles an hour speeds where reasonable in the Vermont system. As you see highlighted, we're seeking grants and innovative funding as to how we proceed. And continuing to market how Vermont passenger rail is communicated to the broader world and as well as in Vermont. We want to expand capacity where it makes sense when the resources allow. And the areas that get, the matters that get spoken about the most are the state's continued primary commitment to extending the the Vermonter back up to Montreal, starting with 1 round trip a day, to add, looking at the potential to extend one Valley Flyer service, which is the service that supplements Amtrak in Connecticut and Massachusetts in the research corridor, up to Brattleboro or even further to White River Junction.
And even on we have it on our bulletin board now.
Yeah, somebody sent it to me.
Thank you.
What is this, the schedule?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I just jump them really quick? So we can talk about this later, but the Valley Flyer is, and you can correct me, paid for generally by Connecticut and Massachusetts, and it goes from New Haven to Greenfield, Massachusetts, which is pretty close to Vermont. What we're talking about, and it's an Amtrak service, so it's if we can get it into Vermont, then Vermonters will have more than one way to get to New York on the eastern side. And White River Junction could make a lot of sense as to be the extension, or it might make sense to have Brattleboro be it. So that's just the short version, but I'm advocating, you can advocate, it would be really good to have that.
And one of the steps going forward with that is that it is part of what would be studied in the FRA Corridor ID program, along with the Western Corridor service that could supplement and complement the Ethan Allen Express going from Albany by way of Bennington to Burlington. And to say a few words about that, I would like to hand this over to my colleague.
Yeah, I'll just say a couple words about our work on the FRA Corridor ID program, and that's Dan to back me up on and fill in any gaps on that. But we have two separate but complementary projects or processes taking place with FRA under their Corridor Identification and Development Program. It's a multi-step process, and we've been through step 1 for both of these corridors, where we develop a comprehensive scope of work, timeline, and budget for developing comprehensive service development plans for both of these corridors, the Vermont Corridor And then this southwestern corridor complementing what is currently there for service as well as service in New York. The next step is contingent upon FRA providing grant funding, which we are waiting with, holding our breath on, and Dan wants to compliment or add anything to that.
Yeah, I mean, we're progressing through the FRA process with that. Currently, we are trying to start step 2. We are waiting for obligation from FRA on that. But I compliment FRA here because they dedicated some funding to advance corridors, not just in Vermont, but nationally. So there's a lot of states doing this. And again, we were fortunate enough to get approved for 2 different corridors. So the Vermont corridor goes all the way to Montreal, right? So it's the whole thing. It's not just what exists today.
In 3 years?
In 3 years, we will not be in Montreal in 3 years.
I'm just.
You're never gonna leave that down.
I know. But anyway, what's nice about the corridor is it's not just the existing service. My point is, it's what we have today, plus where we want to get to, which is in our rail plan.
What's the other corridor?
Well, it's called the Green Mountain Corridor. We submitted 3 corridor ID applications, and they combined 2 of them into one. So we had the existing Ethan Allen, we call that the Ethan Allen corridor. And then we had what we call the Green Mountain Corridor, which went from Rutland down through to Bennington and across over into New York and then down into New York. So they combined those 2 into one, called it the Green Mountain Corridor. So anyway, we have 2, and it incorporates everything that's in our rail plan, which is nice. And the FRA had bought in and said, this is what we want. And right now we're in the service development. The next phase is service development plan. So what do you have? How does it work? And then what projects do you need to keep it working? So that's kind of the steps in layman's terms on what the steps are. And there's the first phase 1 was 100% federal funds. Phase 2 is 90-10. So we've got to pay 10% in state dollars for the next phase. And then any projects, which will be phase 3, will be 80-20. So
So the project would just be the cost, like, for example, extending the Valley Flyer or.
well, that's one, right? That's one thing that's in.
And that's just like operational costs. There isn't any construction.
It's all construction. There would not be operational costs, actually. It would be any capital, including probably any additional, if we needed extra cars or we need, rail cars and things like that. But it wouldn't be operational like running the train on a daily basis.
Because to extend the Valley Flyer, Brattleboro or Montpelier or wherever, it seems like it's all operational costs, unless you need new cars.
Well, we could have a really long discussion
Yeah.
and why it hasn't already been done. The problem is that the Valley Flyer right now is sort of at capacity. It's almost to the point where it can't function. So a train crew can operate so many hours, right? And to get from A to B and be on time, you have to allow so much time. Well, that train right now is just about bumping up to where it can't really go much further north without changing something operational, which is
That's what I'm saying. It's like operational costs. Like you need a new crew. A whole other train set.
and right now that train goes back to Springfield at night, overnight. So
Right.
where do you overnight it? There's a whole bunch of things that have to be worked out. It's not impossible, and I think that's why I think it's in our rail plan, because it is doable. We just need to figure out if we have the money to do it. It's really about money. That's the next step.
What I usually say is that it looks on paper easier than it is in real life because there's also signal and communication issues. And other, like, it's a more complicated project than it looks. That would be the way I usually summarize it. Not to say it isn't a great project, but just that you have to be conscious.
No, but it's worth it too. And that's when we look at economic development and things like that it becomes more worth it.
Excuse me. Going forward. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. It's about connectivity. This is very important. This is perhaps something that has really come through when one looks across the two plans, the rail plan and the freight plan coming soon, that we want to make sure that people out on the highway network know that there is Amtrak in Vermont and how to find the stations. And then the whole realm of improving connectivity to our passenger stations, be it by modes, having adequate short-term and long-term parking, having convenient, comfortable pickup and drop off, and our partnerships that are needed to make all of that work well. And then similarly, we want to facilitate further development of freight transload, or potentially an intermodal facility, and educate and outreach to our shippers, receivers, businesses, and other entities about how might this work? How might this both save them money, but also work for them in a convenient, manageable manner? And so an education and outreach element is incorporated in this.
Right, can I just add to that? So notice the numbers, the ID numbers, so those are pretty recent. So what we were able to do was we put in the rail plan, just that it would be really nice to have transportation, ground transportation from the from the train. And then we also put into the bus, the transit plan that they should coordinate with the train. So now both areas are talking to each other, hopefully.
To be fair, we were talking about them, but with your guidance and leadership, we enhanced that.
Okay, good. So thank you. But it's just really important to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it again comes back to money and operations, with the complexities of having a fixed route bus meet a train that may not be on time, and then the alternatives and the options. So there's a lot in there that I will restrain myself.
Right. So the demand response is the way that we get to that. We can talk about that later.
There are many options and more evolving. I do want to talk briefly about economic development that we need. The rail plan is about rail, but it's also about advancing Vermont's goals. So we want to, I'm going to touch on two elements. On the freight side, we know that the amount of freight moving in the state and the amount of freight moving by rail will continue to increase based on the national forecasting and Vermont's location in this movement between the mid-Atlantic area and Montreal. There will be need for facilities to transfer, be it transloading or intermodal transfer. And we have many of those facilities now. Some of them are vacant. Some of them have pollution issues from years of industrial use. So at a bare minimum, we want to consider the locations that are a priority to our RPC, municipal, and owner partners, and try to protect their zoning, recognizing there are many demands on land uses, to have them available in the future, and also to do cleanup where it is needed and to overall bring them back into use for where they can make use of the rail spurs and best serve Vermont. In particular, what I want to say is we know there will be demand in the future. We don't want to end up in a situation of having to develop green fields if we don't need to, if we can plan ahead. With regard to passenger service, it is useful. We've heard in Vermont and nationally that if we can support smart land use growth around the Amtrak stations, it's adding value to the land around the Amtrak station, but it's also providing an environment for increased use of the Amtrak services. That's pretty much what I wanted to cover there. We've already talked about educating shippers and receivers. This is a big effort. It involves a lot of money. It takes a lot of partners. It's going to take time. We want to keep people inspired. For this reason, I asked to have developed, and we call this the inspiration map, to think about where we could go over time and through collaboration and continuing to seek funding. We can get back up to Montreal. We can increase service. We can increase freight rail use. We want to keep in mind that, like with the interstate system, that passes through Vermont, but also provides opportunity to Vermont businesses and residents at the exits. The rail system passes through and carries people through Vermont, but also provides opportunity at its Amtrak stations and at the transload sites. We want to focus on these connections to maximize the value for Vermont. It's a through system that means that there's more value invested in Vermont's rail system than we could otherwise have. But we also want to maximize the value of what is coming to Vermont from this system.
Zoe,
Yes.
I very quickly put an extremely minor look, but it's not really. You do not have a line from Burlington out to Essex Junction on this map. But in fact, that is an active.
Oh, I
Yes, they do.
It's in yellow.
It's
in
very
yellow.
small. It was hard
Yeah, it's
for
there.
the graphic
It's
designer
yellow.
to show it.
It's yellow, so it doesn't pop
Yeah,
quite
it's
as
there.
On
much.
my screen, it won't show.
Yeah,
Right,
it
that's
is
good. Because that's not only has freight implications, but has tremendous passenger.
Yep.
implications.
Yes.
Yeah. Gotcha.
We did a couple of iterations of this map because that was tricky to show.
Yeah.
But I would just want to say a few words about the freight plan and then draw it together and defer to whatever people would like to speak about. The 2026 freight plan is far along. We're reviewing the final draft of the plan. It has an attractive executive summary. It is about all the modes of moving. Actually, could we go back for
Yeah,
one
sure,
moment?
sure.
Because it's about all the modes of moving freight, including rail freight, trucks, planes that move high value, speed sensitive goods, pipelines, and water. And I just was going to touch that the Champlain Canal is a 60-mile canal connecting the Hudson River to Lake Champlain that has undergone a lot of renovation and is in increasing use. It celebrated its 200th anniversary in 2023, and the ferry company that serves two of the routes that carry trucks, two of the three routes that carry trucks back and forth across Lake Champlain, will be celebrating its 200th anniversary this year. So I just want to note that these other modes, there are many active modes, and to touch on the goals of the freight plan. They, of course, include the achieving and maintaining a state of good repair, safety and resilience, system performance, which includes having the workforce that we need now and in the future. This is a picture of a school roof in front of one of the V-Train snowplows that they proudly got to name. Increasing freight rail use. So we're carrying forward the recommendations from the rail plan into the freight plan. The freight plan is a more high level policy plan than the rail plan. It carries forward the recommended initiatives at a high level into the freight plan. Efficient regional connections, as we've talked about extensively, and mitigating adverse impacts. And there are ways that we need to have freight coming into Vermont and leaving Vermont and moving around in Vermont, but there are some opportunities to enhance freight's role as a good neighbor. So going on to the next slide, I'm sorry.
Can I just ask about that
Yeah.
good neighbor piece? Because I'm a big proponent of freight, as you heard from the beginning of this conversation, but I also live next to the freight folks because I'm in downtown White River Junction.
Right.
And something that has come up significantly in our area is the noise and the consistent kind of interruption at night with very loud noise. Do you have any proposals or recommendations that you look at related to reducing noise? Because I've tried a couple of different angles on this one with noise pollution and I'm getting nowhere, but it's definitely, how do we make these rail lines be good neighbors when that's a main issue and we haven't been able to resolve it?
Would it be appropriate for me to send you the draft part about this subject in the
Yeah.
freight plan? And I welcome your additional thoughts.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of angles that we think might have potential.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of creative solutions that don't make freight more difficult to have in your community or don't like.
Bringing freight is very important, but maybe there are and it's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
Particularly with the rail lines, they are not under local control, but there are cases where there are opportunities. And at least to be aware of what the opportunities are is helpful.
And we've gone down the path, even Dan was on a series of emails with the town of Hartford related to, there's a special noise, thank you, quiet zone. And it was difficult to take any next steps due to the cost on the community. So I think long-term conversations about that would be helpful, but, yeah.
Is this signaling or is it the sound of the trains at night?
It's a bit of both. It's the decoupling and the horns that they have to do every time they decouple or move. There's basically, so they don't run so somebody, yeah, it's like, yes, it's very safety based, but there are regulations you can put in place that allow a train to not do those, is my understanding, if they're within a quiet zone. And then the other one is, hazardous materials, and people have concerns about, they have a hazardous material sign on a freight train that's going by them, and they're like, that seems like it could be flammable and dangerous. And it's like resting near my home. So I think those kinds of, like, whether it's noise or like visibility of those things, people do have questions. So I liked your framing of good neighbor in particular, because I've been trying to find the balance of how to have those conversations.
I want to recognize it's been an issue nationwide, and there are reports out on freight as a good neighbor. We didn't coin that we took that as a, from the industry discussions.
There you go.
So I'd be happy to follow up.
I would love
with
that.
that. And would be happy to come back if we are invited and speak about the freight plan or the corridor ID program. I'm volunteering to be on that. And just to wrap it together, some key takeaways, if you're just going to remember 3 things, one of which I know is near and dear to everybody's heart, just that maintenance is essential. Through these 2 plans, what these 2 plans really brought home was that an area of opportunity is that the interconnection is the connection point between modes, be it on for passengers to reach passenger rail conveniently and safely, and for freight to move among modes, so that each mode can do what it does best, and they are interconnected well. That is part of how we achieve an efficient, effective transportation system. And that is this last point, which is that transportation is a network. A few bullets are on the right side that build on this investment in the state of good repair, wayfinding, and access to Amtrak stations, preserving and fully using sites with freight rail access, educating about and making transload freight easier and more, both more well-known and easier to do. And then finally, advancing these capacity ideas that we discussed, the extension of the Vermonter to Montreal, and exploring the Valley Flyer extension, and continued engagement with the 2 corridor ID studies. That is the end of what we would plan to cover, and we welcome your thoughts and questions.
So this is amazing, and thank you so much for being here. I want to give Carl some time, because we only have until 10. Is that what you said, Mr. Chair?
We've got a 15 minutes.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
yeah,
Thank you
Great.
so much.
so important that people know about this. I really appreciate it.
We only have till 10?
That's what I
I
understand.
think we only have till 11, or maybe I'm just.
We're.
Maybe they have something else,
Oh, never mind.
but
Wait, did we?
No, we're still left.
Okay.
yeah, would you, so Carl's a member of the. Yeah.
I was asked to come just to sort of give some perspectives on the rail plan. And the first one I have is that I'm extremely pleased with what you presented today. So these are exactly the points I was going to make on most of this issue, and I'm very pleased. It's a great update.
We collaborate
I
with
mean, a
Carl.
lot of work is gone into it, so. It's, my comment is that I've been
You want to
doing
come
this.
to
Do you
the,
want to come up?
Sure. Well, assume I don't need notes. I'm notorious for carrying file cabinets around with me. So,
And you did state your name, Carl.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm Carl Fowler. I reside in Williston. I'm a member of the Vermont Rail Advisory Council. I'm retired from a lifelong career of marketing and promoting passenger rail travel, and I was for many, many years very active in the Rail Passenger Association, and at the end of my really active period was their vice chairman. I'm still a member, but I backed a little bit off of that also in retirement. But I've been on the Rail Council for, I think, 25 years. I was trying to find my original appointment papers. I was on it by 2002. So I've got a perspective from what we've been trying to do up here in Vermont for a very long time. And so what I'm going to say today is less specific than it was going to be earlier, because basically the rail plan is addressing things I was concerned with. But there are some things that I think we all could profit from trying to restructure a bit. The Montreal project in particular, which I've been a passionate advocate for going back to the demise of the original Montrealer, has dragged on to a degree that is almost beyond belief. Our current effort for certainly 10 years, and it may have been even longer than that, we had a bus connection for many years, but then Vermont Transit Lines, Greyhound ownership changed, and they didn't want to provide the schedule we needed anymore, and we lost it. Since then, we've been trying to get the train up there, but we can't get there. It is the definition of a complex project, and I realize that. Transportation departments of Quebec and Vermont and New York, Federal Department of Transportation, the Ministry of Transport in Canada, the Canadian National Railway, the new commuter rail service in Montreal, which suddenly ended up owning Central Station. Its complexity boggles the mind, but at the same time, there has been, I think, on both sides, a sort of passive reason to say, well, just we can't get there now. It'll be another 2 years, another 3 years. As long as the goal remains kickable down the road, as long as the goalposts keep changing, no one's going to feel any pressure to actually accomplish this project. I absolutely do not think it should be abandoned, but I would suggest that we consider putting it in a sense on probation. If by, for example, the end of fiscal year 2027, we haven't been able to show that we have a plan for the necessary track work, or we have an agreed upon design for the customs facility in Central Station, we need to look at some other projects we could accomplish in the shorter term, without saying never to Montreal, but coming up with maybe even, you want to call it a Band-Aid. I call it positive multimodality, supporting the reestablishment of the St. Albans or even Burlington to Montreal bus connection that we formerly had. I was looking a few minutes ago at Greyhound lines, and they have gone back up to 3 trips a day from Burlington to Montreal, one of which in the evening would require about a 2-hour schedule change to connect with the train, but that might be possible if they were willing to work with us on it. If not, chartering a bus is expensive, but not insane if you take into account that the cost, number one, would be partially offset by fares, and number two, and more importantly, by the addition of long distance riders to the Vermonter, who would be likely to contribute considerably more to our pot there. I was thrilled to see that we're at 78% cost recovery. I mean, that's really outstanding. There are not that many state operated trains in the country that can say that. So that's one example. Another would be to look at what other options indeed might be possible. Not only obviously fixing the Burlington Essex branch, but if we did do that, is there a more productive way to use that capacity than just trying to put together a cross-platform transfer someday at Essex Junction to get people on the Ethan Allen route to Montreal? And let me just suggest something that's fairly radical, but what if, for example, after completing that work, and a lot of it's been done by New England Central for their own benefit. That's not a Vermont-owned line. That belongs to New England Central Railroad, and they have been aggressive in getting grants to help fix it. But what if after we fixed that, we rerouted the Ethan Allen Express to Barrie Montpelier rather than terminating Burlington, and switched in the long term the Vermonter into doing something different as well, Montreal, obviously. But or what if we routed the Vermonter to start in Barrie Montpelier in the morning and sent the Ethan Allen to St. Albans? Thus preserved. There is already a service facility there. Your question about what would it cost to bring up the Valley Flyer trains? There will need to be money spent to build a servicing facility either in Brattleboro or White River Junction. They have to be able to fuel the train. They have to be able to pump sewage out. They have to be able to clean the train. So there's not no cost to doing that, but it isn't staggering. But we're looking at in the plan we just saw a moment ago, working to upgrade the tracks that are just across the street here practically to 286,000 pound capacity. If you do that, a passenger train can run at 45 to 50 miles an hour on the line. And we would be able to produce an internal service for the benefit of the state of Vermont that could also reach out nationally. If again, we sent the Vermonter down to Burlington and the Ethan Allen to St. Albans, both towns would retain their services. But the Vermonter would start here in the morning and it would actually allow people to come into Burlington, Middlebury and Montpelier for the day, potentially, depending on how schedules work out. So it's just thoughts, it's brainstorm. But there's got to be something we can do that will shake loose the Montreal project. And my most important suggestion is put some accomplishable goal dates on it that would trigger other actions by us if we can't get it to move. We know there are problems between the US and Canada at the moment. We know those problems are likely to last for a while. If in truth, realistically, we can't expect to see that train running in 3 years, I'm crushed. The track work that needs to be done is marginal. It's just under 9 miles from the Vermont border to the junction with the Adirondack route in Canada at a place called Caddick, Quebec. That would be one summer of track and tie work for a railroad company to bring in welded rail, ballast. There's a drawbridge over the Richelieu River. That's the biggie. We probably have to automate that drawbridge to satisfy the immigration services that both countries need for the train to be effectively sealed from Montreal to St. Albans. But that's not an incredibly complex project. We've done similar work. We don't have to actually do 60 miles of track over because the Adirondack is running on it already. Not at ideal speeds, 30 to 50 miles an hour, but it's running on it. It's running reliably. Indeed, it's frequently arriving in Montreal half an hour to 45 minutes early, suggesting the track conditions are actually much better than we might realize. So, do we know what that project would cost? I don't know. I asked Dan, do we finally have any suggestion from CN as to what they might want between the border and Caddick? Have they ever come through and talked to us about that?
So this is a much longer discussion and Carl is missing a bunch of points on what steps that need to be done here.
Oh, I'm not saying those are the only ones.
So,
Not at all. But I'm suggesting we divide this up in what I call a multi-track approach.
Oh.
That we have a project group looking at that issue, which definitely has to be addressed. Do we have a project group looking at Central Station? We probably do, but do they have deadlines they're working to? If they don't, after all these years, why do we keep doing this?
We do not control the government in Canada.
True.
We do not control Transport Quebec. We do not control the owners of the station in Montreal. We are working with them monthly, on a monthly call, and we are making progress. I'm going to stop there.
And I won't ask you for more, but I will say again, if we can't get to a conclusion after 10 years, what can we do to try to shake it loose? If they're just not going to work with us,
They are working with us.
Yeah. good.
They're
Then
working with us.
why is it still more than 3 years away, Dan?
And this is a longer
It's a
conversation,
longer conversation.
but I just
and
wanted
This is not.
this committee to hear other thoughts.
Yeah.
In the shorter term, we could provide that bus again. To Montreal.
Could we do what the Adirondack does and stop the border and then go on?
Absolutely. That is another possibility, although
that-
unfortunately the customs facility they're building up there is over at Rouse's Point, which we can't reach, at least not rationally. But yes, of course we could.
But we'd have to have some kind of facility at the border where you stop.
The Montreal Customs Facility in Central Station
Right, that's the ultimate.
Right, produces a great psychological benefit because the schedule of the train would instantly be accelerated by between 60 and 90 minutes. You wouldn't have to sit at the border doing customs.
Right.
Of course, in the end of the day, though, if customs is being conducted in Central Station of Montreal, that time will still be eaten. It's just where did it get eaten up? And psychologically, it's good to make the train look faster. The truth is, in the world we live in now, we're not going to eliminate and go back to like the car waving it through the border. It's going to be a serious inspection. I'm not against the facility, but you just did suggest something is a possibility we haven't looked at for a few years. Would it be possible to come into Canada, back up a mile or so to the existing facility, conduct the clearance and proceed on? The one benefit of conducting the immigration and naturalization facilities at the border is that local traffic then becomes possible again in the province of Quebec. And maybe that might get them more interested in the project if, for example, Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu could be put on the route. We pass through it, but we can't stop.
Right.
I don't know. But, you know, my point is not that Dan is wrong about all the complexity of this. God, it's mind numbing. And yet at the end of the day, it's build a facility in Central Station, negotiate access to the track, do the repairs needed from Caddick to the border, and run a train. And if we can't make those pieces go together, then we do need to have options. And I don't want to abandon Montreal, but if the truth is we have to wait till 2028 before everybody's going to really move with some kind of alacrity on this, then what could we do in the interim that might move it forward? And there's a couple of other examples too that I know that Wendy's interested in. Other bus rail coordination. It always comes down to the fact the train might be running late one day, and then we'd have to wait for it. And the fix for that is possibly Uber or Lyft, if they exist in a town, or it's trying to find a taxi or limo service that would agree to a contract to provide service only on days when there was a passenger expected. For decades, Amtrak provided a Westport, New York to Lake Placid bus connection, which only ran if there were passengers who wanted to go to Lake Placid. It had to be booked in advance and had to be paid for in advance. If there was nobody who wanted to go, it didn't run. It was basically a guy over in Lake Placid, a limo service that would come over, meet the train if there was ridership. Have we looked at that kind of thing to get some more integration with our existing services? We're doing it already with the Vermont Transline buses. They take Amtrak tickets, they go to the Amtrak station in Albany. They are at least in part coordinated, although ironically, the only stop north of Albany that's in common is Regents. But yeah, we're already sort of doing that. We could go from Rutland to Ludlow for Okemo skiing. We could go from Fellows Falls to Ludlow for Okemo skiing. Those are ideas that don't take the kind of investment and money that some of these issues do. Could we look at regional service opportunities that could be partially bus, partially rail? Could we call a summit with the bus operators in this state, whose services are at least in part subsidized by VTrans, and get both sides to sit down and really see if there's a way to work out this connectivity problem? Now, and the bus services are starting to unravel. They may be more interested in some support than they were a few years ago. I moved to Williston in 2012, and I looked immediately at how would I get up to the station in Essex Junction by train. And the answer was in the morning, there was a bus, the number 10, that would have taken me from a block from my house right to the door. But in the evening, it quit running at 6 and I couldn't get home. Now that bus has died. It's gone. That route is one of the ones that Green Mountain Transit suspended indefinitely. But it still wouldn't have helped me because I couldn't get there. But I can Uber it. I can taxi it with limited taxi services left. Why can't we look at more of that kind of stuff? I want to see us moving on priorities we can accomplish. And maybe there are some things here that we can. And I think with that, I do not mean to be critical of VTrans. VTrans has proven more than almost any other state in the country that they can get these projects done and get them done in a professional way and get them done with impeccable quality of work. But we don't still have much beyond the core of the two routes we've always been looking at. It's 8 miles basically from downtown Burlington to Essex Junction. If you get there, there's lots of things you could do with the trains. It's a little bit only from the border to Caddick. If we could just get that piece patched in, maybe the Canadians would see the need to move faster. If they won't complete the studies in Montreal, I absolutely agree with you that we could look at, is it possible to do it as we used to at the border? Now, I'll tell you how Montreal handled it in the latter years. There was a taxi provided to pick up U.S. or Canadian customs officers, and they rode the train between Caddick and St. Albans. I know both agencies said they won't do that again. But if the problem was needing to taxi somebody from Rouse's Point over to the border to interview passengers on the Vermonter, could we do that better than buying a whole train?
Thank you.
With that, I'll let you guys go. I appreciate very much
Thank
the
you.
opportunity to speak. I offer you to call me if you need something. I do have a small gift from the Advocates for Passenger Rail in the form of a souvenir pen.
Dan, did you want to say anything?
Yeah.
Do you want me to?
Well, if you want to wrap this up.
Sure. I guess I'll just add,
Thank you.
A bit of an update on the Montreal side, which I believe, for the record, Dan Delevere and V-Trans. We are making progress in Montreal. I understand the frustration from everybody who's not at the table with me monthly. I get it. It seems like it's not moving. I can assure you it's moving. I have so many balls in the air with this project that I can't really tell you a little bit about each ball, but this includes Amtrak, it includes New York, it includes the owners of the station in Montreal. That station project is 3 blocks deep. We are underground for 3 blocks. It's complicated, but we're moving. Customs and Border Protection on both sides of the border have said to me they will not service our train at the border. We cannot go and just do what we used to do or do what the Adirondack is doing. They don't want to do what the Adirondack is doing right now. That's why they're building a facility there. We don't have that option on the Vermonter. We can't just start running it and they won't do it. So that is not an option. I guess without some change in political pressure in DC to make it happen. And who knows if we can get the Canadian side to do it. I don't know. I feel like we are making progress, and I can't talk about some of the stuff because there is some stuff at the station right now that is not, I'm not gonna say it's not public, it's public. People know we're trying to come there, but the plans are not public and it affects people at that station. And that's all I'm gonna say. And it's not out there, and there's a reason why it's not out there. Because it's not a defined plan yet. It's in the concept phase. It needs to go from the concept phase from where we are right now to the actual engineering documents, and that is the step we are working on right now. That is literally where we are.
Okay.
The province of Quebec had agreed to pay for the next step. For whatever reason, call it whatever, I don't know if it was political or not, that funding disappeared. New York and Vermont have decided to advance. We had the opportunity to take on the next step, and we are going to do that. That is literally where we are right now. So this project is very alive and well. So
Do you still have, what's his name, working on the one you had a contract with?
what's his, I don't know what, there's so many what's his names that I know.
He used to be the commissioner of BGS and.
Oh, yeah.
Brian Searles. Brian Searles passed away. Yeah, he was a great advocate. Yeah, he knew a lot of people on the political side.
It wasn't he kind of like.
He was helping. Yeah, no, he was.
Passed away. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, he was pulling together a lot of the political folks in Montreal for us. We have that. That's still occurring. And I'm in those meetings.
Is there a connection with also with our Montreal International Business Development Effort Office?
We also are connected here a little bit with our agency of commerce, that they are in the loop with what we're doing.
We have a person over there to make this connection, so I assume they're involved.
They are involved. Again, I understand we're not there. I get it, and it's taken forever, and it is a big nut to crack. There are so many pieces here. You've got Customs and Border Protection on both sides. V-Trans doesn't control them. We are working with them. We are getting what they need into the plan in Montreal, which getting those two to agree on a combined use customs facility. I'm going this way, your passenger are going that way, and we're going to clear them. Imagine that complication in building a facility that meets both countries' needs.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just one engineering hurdle that we're getting over. Anyway, long story short, Chair, it is moving. It is not 3 years.
Because of 2.
I would like to be able to come in here, in the next couple of years with a set of plans to show you on what the next step is for Montreal. So, but until those are publicly available, like, they're not out there, so. It's in another country, and you guys got to imagine how complicated that is.
Yeah, we
I think anybody who's been on transportation for as long as Southern Westman understands that. Myself.
But I can assure you we're making progress, though. We are,
Will you notify us when we're 3 years away?
sure.
Okay. That'd be great.
I want to get this done, I don't know how much time.
As much as we do.
Right, I want to retire it someday. My wife tells me I need to, so, my goal is, let's get it done. I've been working on this thing for 15 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.